On a cold, quiet April night in 1912, the icy North Atlantic stretched endless and indifferent beneath a sky of scattered stars. Far out beyond the reach of land, the world's most magnificent ship, the RMS Titanic, hurtled toward her fate, unaware that destiny was already whispered on the waves. At 11:40 p.m., the lookout's cry shattered the silence. As the iceberg loomed, the Titanic's desperate SOS pulsed through the darkness, a plea for help echoing across the void. Over a century has passed since that fateful night, but the Titanic's story, shrouded in tragedy, lingers on, haunted by unanswered questions, persistent myths, and the silent presence of those lost beneath the sea. To understand why the Titanic continues to fascinate, we must journey back, sifting through truth, legend, and the ghosts that linger beneath the waves. The Titanic was more than a ship. It was the embodiment of an era's ambition, pride, and technological prowess. In the early 20th century, the world was in the grip of an industrial revolution, and the race to build the biggest, fastest, and most luxurious ocean liner had reached a fever pitch. The Titanic, flagship of the White Star Line, was the ultimate symbol of human glory. Her construction cost a staggering $7.5 million, an astronomical sum in 1912. She was 14 stories tall from keel to smokestack, the largest moving object ever made by human hands. Inside the Titanic was a floating palace. Marble grand staircases gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers. First-class ballrooms hosted the world's elite, and private suites rivaled the finest hotels. There were Turkish baths, libraries, and even a swimming pool. 8 steel bulkheads and 4 immense smokestacks spoke of safety and strength. The White Star Line proclaimed her unsinkable, and the world believed it, blind to the hubris beneath the claim. Yet even before she sailed, omens rippled through the Titanic's story. As she departed Southampton, the massive vacuum created by her movement nearly pulled the docked ship New York into her path, a near miss that unsettled onlookers. At Queenstown, Ireland, the last port of call, hundreds of tons of provisions were loaded, along with a curious cargo that would later spark rumours, an ancient Egyptian mummy said to carry a deadly curse. Aboard were 2,201 souls, 885 crew members, and over 1,300 passengers from every walk of life. The world's wealthiest families mingled with immigrants chasing dreams of a better life in America. It was a floating microcosm of the age, class divisions, hope, ambition, and naivete, all sealed together within steel walls. The voyage began with celebration, but warnings, ignored or misplaced, shadowed the journey. As the Titanic steamed across the Atlantic, nearby ships sent repeated messages: icebergs ahead, caution advised. Yet in an era where wireless communication was still new, the Titanic's wireless operators were overwhelmed. Paid passenger messages took precedence over navigational alerts. Crucial warnings never reached the bridge. Other safety lapses compounded the danger. The lookouts, perched high in the crow's nest, had no binoculars. The night was eerily calm and moonless, the sea like glass, a surface so still it made icebergs nearly invisible. In those conditions, disaster crept closer with every mile. Then, the moment of reckoning. At 11:40 p.m. on April 14th, the lookouts finally spotted the looming berg. Too late. The bridge rang frantic commands. "Harder starboard! Reverse engines!" The Titanic turned, but not fast enough. Her starboard side scraped the ice, opening wounds along 5 watertight compartments. The Titanic was built to stay afloat, with 4 flooded, but 5 meant doom. Water poured in with relentless force. The bow dipped. The clock began ticking. Chaos unfolded slowly at first, then accelerated as reality set in. The Titanic carried just 20 lifeboats, enough for 1,178 people, barely more than half of those on board. Regulations, based on the ship's tonnage rather than her human cargo, were tragically outdated. Evacuation protocols faltered. First-class passengers were ushered to safety, while third-class families struggled to navigate confusing corridors and, in some cases, found gates locked to prevent mingling between the classes. Panic, disbelief, and the bitter cold conspired to turn order into desperation. Distress signals radiated outward, Morse code blips and rockets into the night sky. The Carpathia, another liner, received the call and steamed toward the foundering ship at full speed, but she was hours away. Lifeboats were lowered, some half empty, as many clung to the belief that the Titanic could not possibly sink. As the bow sank lower, musicians played on, their melodies a haunting lullaby for the doomed. By 2:18 a.m., the ship's power failed. Lights flickered and died. The Titanic's massive hull, under unbearable stress, broke in two. At 2:20 a.m., the stern rose briefly, then slipped beneath the waves with a roar that shattered the night. Over 1,500 lives vanished into the freezing water. Only 705 would survive to tell their stories. In the days that followed, confusion and misinformation spread. Newspapers in distant cities, like St. Petersburg, reported that all passengers had been rescued. The reality, slowly, painfully, emerged as survivors arrived in New York, traumatized and grieving. The world reeled, demanding answers. Who were the people aboard that night? The richest of the rich, business magnates, aristocrats and celebrities, paid up to $3,100 for a first-class ticket, the equivalent of $200,000 today. In steerage, tickets cost as little as $32, bought by immigrants fleeing hardship, chasing hope across the ocean. Yet on that night, tragedy did not discriminate. The icy water claimed the powerful and the humble alike. Questions lingered. Could the Titanic have survived if she had slowed down, or if her warnings had been heeded? Might she have lived if she'd struck the iceberg head-on, or if evasive maneuvers hadn't torn open so many compartments? Some whispered of cover-ups, suggesting that the White Star Line moved swiftly to protect its reputation, leaving mistakes buried with the ship. Eerie coincidences fueled the sense of destiny and doom. 14 years before the disaster, Morgan Robertson published a novella titled Futility, or The Wreck of the Titan. In his tale, a gigantic, unsinkable ship called Titan strikes an iceberg in April in the North Atlantic and sinks. The Titan was 243 meters long, the Titanic 269. Both carried far too few lifeboats for their passengers. 2,500 on the fictional Titan, 2,200 on the real Titanic. The chilling similarities continue to baffle readers and researchers, even as rational explanations are offered. Then there is the legend of the mummy's curse. According to rumour, a priestess's mummy, inscribed with a warning, "Anyone who disturbs my rest will be devoured by the sea," was smuggled aboard Titanic as cargo. The story, spread by sensationalist journalists, linked the mummy to a trail of accidents, fires, and strange deaths, both before and after her arrival in Britain. Museums reportedly refused to display or even store the artifact, and when Titanic vanished, the legend grew. Yet, investigation reveals no evidence. The infamous unlucky mummy never left the British Museum. Still, the curse endures in popular imagination, a symbol of our need to explain the unexplainable, to seek meaning in tragedy. The Titanic's allure only deepened after her discovery in 1985, resting upright on the ocean floor at a depth of 3,800 meters. Since then, dozens of expeditions have attempted to unlock her secrets. The site is a wonder and a warning, a place only a handful of submersibles can reach, where darkness, pressure and time conspire to preserve and destroy. Exploring the Titanic's grave is not without peril. In 1991, a joint Russian-Canadian-American expedition nearly ended in disaster when a submersible became trapped in the ship's twisted wreckage, freed only by the intervention of a second sub. In 1995, filmmaker James Cameron braved violent currents and electrical failures to capture footage for his celebrated film, risking his life in pursuit of authenticity. In 2000, a science journalist's sub was pinned by falling debris against Titanic's giant propeller, escaping only after a tense hour. The dangers are not relics of the past. In 2023, OceanGate Expeditions offered private tours of Titanic's resting place for $250,000 per passenger. On June 18th, their submersible Titan dove toward the wreck with 5 people aboard, including a billionaire explorer and OceanGate's own founder. Titan was an innovative vessel, built from carbon fiber and titanium, but it had never received third-party safety certification. Midway through the dive, contact was lost. The world watched in horror as rescue efforts played out. Days later, debris confirmed the worst. Titan had imploded under the crushing pressure, killing all aboard instantly. The Titan disaster reignited controversy. Former OceanGate engineers and over 30 industry experts had warned of catastrophic design flaws years earlier. Letters, memos, and lawsuits painted a picture of ignored warnings and questionable ethics. The tragedy forced a reckoning. Should private companies be allowed to risk lives in pursuit of profit and adventure? Who is responsible for protecting these sacred sites and the people who visit them? For some, the repeated misfortunes at Titanic's grave suggest something deeper, a spiritual warning or even a curse. Are we disturbing a maritime cemetery, trespassing on hallowed ground? Is the site haunted by the souls of those lost, or by the artifacts, real or imagined, carried aboard? Should we leave Titanic in peace as a testament to human error, hope, and hubris? The Titanic story is ultimately a mirror, reflecting our greatest ambitions and our deepest failings. Her sinking was a tragedy of class disparity and complacency, a failure of technology and communication. The ship was a marvel, but also a warning. No achievement is invincible, and no life immune to fate. Yet the Titanic is more than a cautionary tale. She is a symbol, and now a ghost, haunting the ocean's depths and our collective memory. Each expedition, each new theory or discovery, adds to her legend. The ship's rusting hull holds more than metal. It holds stories, secrets, and souls. It is a place where history and myth intertwine, where truth and superstition coexist like shadows on the seafloor. Perhaps in the end, some truths about Titanic will be forever silent, buried beneath 3,800 meters of salt and shadow, where only the bravest or most curious dare to look. The Titanic endures as one of history's most powerful stories, a tale of glory and grief, of innovation and error, of mystery and memory. And as long as her wreck remains, deep and undisturbed, so too will the questions, echoing in the darkness, waiting to be answered, or perhaps left forever unspoken.